This is a marine engine I'm working on. It's one that was given to me and didn't work. So I've been going over it and taking it apart. And I found quite a few things wrong with it. This is one of the valves, intake valves. It's got a bad valve. It's worn really, really bad. The piston. This is one of the pistons that's in there. It's a dual cylinder marine engine. This is the head to it, valve assembly. This is a makeshift gasket that I use temporarily because before I in a piece of paper here. Because it's a two-cylinder. This engine, I really don't know much about it. It was, like I said, it was a marine engine. This is the flywheel here. I believe it's about 3 inches. I haven't measured it, about 3 inches. It is a homemade engine. It's the eccentrics are really kind of nice. I took everything apart because it just wasn't working right. The valves, it just wouldn't even run. This engine off of air. I'm not going to be running it off of steam. So I went to the hardware store this morning. There was a groove. This was the original piston. I think I just told you I remade them. I just reworked them a little bit. And I opened up the groove a little bit, and I got an O-ring that fit in here. And you can see it. And I tried a couple different things for valves, and it just didn't work well. So I'm going to try this O-ring. I'm only going to run it on air. I wouldn't advise it if you're going to run it in steam, because I don't know, it may make it too soft. The oil itself over time may swell this O-ring, which I'm hoping will. It's a little undersized, so I'm hoping that the oil will swell it, which I'm sure it will, and make it a nice tight fit. But anyway, I tore it all apart. I'm down to the base. This particular base, actually, I did some research on it, and it's rubber, which is kind of interesting. It looks like it's wood or something. It's rubber. It's got a metal plate in the bottom, and there's 4 holes in each corner that are tapped. And I did some research on it, and it's kind of interesting because I was wondering what is this thing? And right here, you probably can't read it, especially because it's upside down. But if you could read this here, what it does say is Lord Erie, PA. Up top here we have a 857, and it says Lord Erie, PA, made in USA. And then there's a J-5130 dash, and then I can't read the last digit because something happened to it. But anyway, I did some research. I looked that up on the internet, and it comes to find out what this is some kind of a cargo container. When they ship cargo containers, I guess this is some kind of a mount that keeps them from moving around. You can bolt from here and bolt from here, and it's a rubber mount. So I don't know how it wound up in a steam engine. It kind of looks like a base that was made, so I do kind of understand that. But anyway, I will give it a new base down the road. But anyway, that's what that is. This is steel and brass. It's kind of interesting. This is the head for it. I took the head off. It had no gaskets here. This is steam or airline coming in here. This is all make, which is kind of neat. Little fittings and the copper and brass fittings that were made. These are the back of the slides. And then it's a 2-cylinder here and here. And exhaust ports here for each cylinder. And the heads were, I think there's 6 bolt holes, little tiny screws. And I mean little tiny screws. That I think they were number 4 maybe. So anyway, we got a connecting rod here. We've got a piston, and this is your valve. So there's a slide. And so anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this whole engine. I'm going to rework it a little bit, and I'll start putting it back together, and I'll take videos as I rework it, put it back together. The first thing I'm going to do is, here's the crank. I got it all the way down to the crank. And it's 1/4 inch steel. What they did was they drilled here. This square stock is drilled through, and the round stock is pushed through it. And I have it measured. It's about a 1/2 inch gap here. And then what they did, I don't know if you can see it, but right here they drilled and pinned on both sides. So what's happened is, and over here they brazed it a little bit. You can see the braze. But what's happened over here is that there's movement now. See that? Ever so slightly in the crank. And so what happens when it goes around, it goes up and down a little bit. The weight of the flywheel, when it's on there, as it spins around, you can only imagine, it vibrates up and down. So first thing I'm going to try to do is somehow I don't want to remake this crank, because that's an awful lot of work right there. It just needs a little repair. But anyway, what I'm going to try to do is get in here with some brazing, clean this up, and braze these ends a little bit, and then regrind them so it gets a slop out so they're nice and solid. So I believe what I'm going to do is put this between the center on my lathe to hold it nice and straight, make sure it's nice and straight, and braze it right in place on my lathes, and then come back and grind it. And Alright, I just brazed it up. I brazed it here. I'm going to do some filing, cleaning up a little bit. And then I brazed it back here. And it's pretty strong now. Okay, now I've got the crank back in position. There's 3 bearings, brass bearings. There's one here, and one here. I have the top of the brass bearing onto this one, not on these 3, these other 2. And then there's the top of the bushing. So now I'm going to put the other 2 bushings on. Okay, I've got the crankshaft mounted back, the bearings. Now it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was, and it's solid, so it won't vibrate as bad. I'm going to want to run this engine at a low RPM anyway, so it's pretty doggone good. So anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to put the eccentric on, and that's made of 3 pieces. There's a lot of ways to make it. This one's pretty common. You have a piece here which acts like a door on one side, if you will, and then you have a bearing sort of thing that comes apart. Pretty much all it is a ring out of brass, and then there's a eccentric part, and you can see the eccentric meaning off center. The hole here is off center. This will drive the valve. So basically, put this on, we just got to take and slide this back piece over the shaft. I drilled a hole. There was no way to oil this. They had no way to oil this. So I drilled a small hole here, an oil port, if you will. Alright, so we're going to oil this bearing up a little bit. Okay. Then we're going to slide this ring on. And then we've got this part here. There's a set screw that goes in there. Okay. And then this goes on here. Now there's a hole here. There's a hole here. And then there's a hole here that's threaded. So that's what holds the 2 together. I believe this is a screw for it. If not, it is now, because it's perfect. I'm going to put a little oil in through that port and spin the bearing. Now what I can do is put the flywheel on. I can mount the flywheel now. So there we go. So there's the bottom crank and the flywheel to my engine, and get that part all done. Looks good, solid, rolls pretty good. It's a lot better than it was before. Okay, now I've got my crankshaft back in position, and it's all pretty tight now, and it spins real nice and easy. A lot better than it was. We've got the slides here. We're going to do some work on the slides actually before we mount it. We're going to take this apart some and make some real gaskets, get rid of the fortune cookie gasket, and get rid of the paper gasket. That was a test before I made them. And then you go back and make a real gasket. I have some gasket material I purchased at the hardware store, which I'm going to make some gaskets out of it. I also have some packing glands here that had absolutely no packing in at all in there, so I got to make some packing. I'll just go and do that out of a piece of yarn, small piece of yarn, wrap it, fill it with oil, and put the nuts back on, and I'll squish that yarn up around the cylinder shaft there and the piston shaft and lubricate it, and also keep the steam in. Okay, I got it back together, and I haven't got it running yet because I got to make a new valve for this side here. I got everything back together. It's pretty smooth. There's a few things I want to change, which I'm going to. If you look at the concentric rod here and the valves here, the concentric's over here, but yet they connected it with a straight rod, whoever made it. So let's see if you can see that. There we go. See, it's a straight rod, so it actually runs on an angle, which I don't like, on both sides here. I have this one off, and I have the valve out. So I have the valve in on this side, I have the valve out on this side here. So but I got all the connecting rods back together again. I got the slide rails back on. They're on the back here. Straightened those out a little bit. I made a gasket here for this with some gasket material, and a nice punch that my father gave me. It was a leather punch, and it's got dies on it. It worked out really nice for the gasket material. Just pick your size and punch it out and then cut it out. So I've obviously, this one I haven't made yet. I'll get rid of the piece of paper and make a gasket for this side. But right now what I have to do is I have to make a new valve for this side here. And this side works okay. This side works good. It's got some nice compression on it and suction, you can feel it. But this valve was wore out, and you can see here, if you look really close, if it can focus, I don't know if you can see it, but right there on both sides it looks like when it was in the lathe it came loose, so it chewed it up some. Well, that didn't help, of course. So I'm going to make a new one. Now I've already started. What I have, I don't know if anybody recognizes this, but this is probably a 1950s piece of brass, or maybe even earlier, of a bathroom stem for an old shower valve. So I keep old brass around, kicking around, because you never know when you might need a piece. And look at that. So I started machining it down. Right now I'm just a few thousandths over, and so I get it down so it fits inside the cylinder here, the valve cylinder. I'm taking a few thousandths off. It is loose. See that play? It's not much. But it's just enough to let the air by, of course. So now I'm going to make a new valve out of this. Slightly, a few thousandths over. Let me turn this down and fit it so it's nice and tight.